Hey everybody, it's Mo Bunnell, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. I and my teams have trained over 15,000 experts all over the world on sound and efficient and authentic, probably the best word, authentic business development skills. And I'm joined today on the show by Mitch Joel. Mitch is one of the top experts in the world at using social media to grow your book of business, to deepen relationships, to enhance your career. And his thoughts were great in the last couple episodes. In this one, I asked him how can we use, or what's his best advice, really, high-level question on how we can deepen relationships. And his insights were really, really good in this episode. So, hey, before we get into it, know that if you want our best thinking on how to grow your relationships, go to growbigplaybook.com. That's growbigplaybook.com. Sign up there. And you will not only get an instant download on how to think about business development, but you'll get our weekly small article that I spend about 3 hours writing every single week so that you can read it in about 3 minutes and get a nugget, get something that you can read quickly and put into practice right away. That's growbigplaybook.com. All right, here's Mitch Joel on how we can deepen relationships. Hey everybody, it's Mo, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. This is my third episode in a row with Mitch Joel. Mitch is a best-selling author, he's a speaker, he scaled an agency up to a very large level before he sold it, and he's just been dropping some serious knowledge in our last 2 episodes. Mitch, in this one, I want to ask you a question. It's going to build on some of the things I think we've already covered. What's your best advice for professionals to deepen long-term relationships?
In the first couple of episodes, we tackled some of the words I'll use, but people will not leave a relationship, even if they're paying you more than someone else. And again, that's another Jeffrey Gitomerism, if they like you, right? All things being equal, people will buy from people they want to work with and people they like, and they will even justify a higher expense based off of a myriad of reasons. So you might look at it and fall into that whole thing of, how do you want it cheap, fast, and easy? But I don't prescribe to that. I mean, even if you have something that is cheaply priced and easy to access, why would someone buy from you? They like you. They like spending time with you. They like getting to know you. So that's part one. Part two is the harder one. Part two is don't become a dinosaur. It's all too often when I'm speaking to people who want my advice on innovation in the future and where things are going, that either to me they are a dinosaur or they're self-identifying as a dinosaur. I can't get this. I don't do this. Those are bad words, right? It's not that you can't, it's not that you can't, it's that you won't. I mean, ultimately that's what it is. So people say, I'm too old to, most entrepreneurs start in their mid 50s and 60s. So it's too late. It's not too late. We just came through a global pandemic. We're probably still a bit in this when this runs. And the truth of the matter is that we had a mass digitization of everybody from our kindergarten and nursery kids all the way up to our eldest of elderly. We had our eldest of elderly. We were slipping iPads underneath the door so that we could FaceTime with them and then show them how to online order for groceries and things like that. And their habits fundamentally changed. All of a sudden they're texting and using voice and using FaceTime and they've totally got it down pat. And so when I hear these stories, I can get quite frustrated. It's one thing to be tired in your business. It's one thing to be fatigued. It's one thing to be overworked. All of us are dealing with that in one way, shape, or form. But being a dinosaur is a choice. And again, because of technology and all of the things it affords, I always find it to be, they have that show, The Amazing Race. I don't know if they have it where you were, it ran for several years, but they have these fast forwards. Like you could go from here to here and not do all these things with this little thing. I think technology can often be that fast forward in your world. So, in the olden days before the internet, if you wanted to actually create content, it was really challenging. There was tons of gatekeepers or it was really expensive. In this day and age, like name me a form of media that's expensive to do. I mean, you can't see the infrastructure I have here, but I promise you, Mo, that I have a fully available broadcast studio here that is very reasonable to do but it takes time. It takes time and effort to put the right pieces together. It takes time and effort to learn how to use it really effectively. And this attitude that I see often is, well, I just want someone else to come in and set it all up. That's great. But what if something goes sideways? So I'm somebody who would rather take the extra hour or two and learn how to do it and learn how to do it well. And the reason is I don't want to ever be the dinosaur. I may get old. I may lose all my hair. I may gray. I may wrinkle. I may sag like we all will, but I will never be a dinosaur. I'll be the oldest person ever trying out the latest digital technology, whether it's hardware or software, just because I want to see what happens on the journey.
Yeah, we are so aligned on this. Like today, as we record, we'll release this later, everybody, but it happens to be the Worldwide Developers Conference for Apple. I can't wait to see what they come up with, and I'll probably go back and watch the entire show or the main keynote because I just can't wait to see what's coming in September for things like that. So back to your points, Mitch, I liked your 2 points. Get folks to like you in a way that's authentic and genuine and clearly has their best interest in mind. I know that underpinnings of what you do. And I think that don't be a dinosaur idea is attractive. I mean, the very fact that you're on the cutting edge of your ways of thinking and you love brands, you love technology, things like that. So comment on that, go a little bit deeper. I have a feeling that the don't be a dinosaur interacts pretty darn well with people liking you too. Your thoughts?
One is you cannot be a dinosaur and be really proactive and just fundamentally not be good at telling stories. So you'll see behind me, there's some music instruments and people say, oh, you're a bass player. No, I'm not really a bass player. I used to play and I studied at post-secondary. I have a podcast now where I interview bass players because I love those types of musicians and that type of music. But I actually am not a bass player. Do I know how to play the bass? A little bit, but I'm not a bass player. So can anybody write a book? Yes. Is everybody an author? No. Can anybody start a podcast? Yes. Is everybody a podcaster? No. And just because you start a podcast, I don't think it makes you a podcaster. I think what makes you a podcaster, one, is skill. Sometimes you can acquire it. More often than not, there's a certain it factor or thing that people just happen to be attracted to. And that attraction will happen not as a binary. It's not on or off. It's a spectrum. So somebody can have millions and millions of followers. I don't, but someone like me can have hundreds of thousands of followers, and that's just the discernible market, and it'll open up over time. But that's the perspective that I bring to it. So there is a bit of that idea, and then again the consistency of it. So many people get really excited about it out of the gates, and they're going to go, but are you in it? So again, when people talk to me about, don't you ever get tired of doing your podcast? Don't you ever get tired of writing articles? My answer is, do you get tired of breathing? I just don't. I have to do this. It's what I have to do. So when you have that compelling feeling in you, it's not really work, troublesome. I'm not laboring every day over what I'm going to write or who I'm going to speak to. In fact, it's inversed. I spend most of my time being upset that I don't have more time to write because there's so many more things I want to cover and so many more people that I'd like to interview and spend time with. But I'm also trying to be respectful of the fact that there's a lot of stuff out there. And so I temper the pulse of how I put stuff out there in that way as well. So those would be some of my thoughts around how we go deeper.
Yeah, no, I think it's perfect. Well, let's wrap up this episode with this. If you had to do a rapid fire answer to the most important, and we covered a lot of ground, so you could answer this and based on something we already talked or something different. But let's say a new partner at a law firm comes to you, Mitch, and says, man, I've been focused on this deep expertise my whole life. I love a thing. I absolutely love downstream water rights in California, whatever the expertise is. And they say, I have to get better at this relationship thing. What's your advice?
Networking is great. Keith Ferrazzi wrote an incredible book called Never Eat Alone that had a massive impact on me. And there were years prior to having kids and being married that I never ate any meal alone. And now I don't eat meals alone, but it's with family and things like that in the evening. So that struck out, a third of it. But every breakfast and every lunch, I don't eat alone. I don't mean alone with the same person across the hall from me. I mean, I'm proactively filling my calendar with ways to connect to people. And I've also been surprised over the many, many years I've been doing this that it usually isn't as direct as you think. I'll speak to the person at the government who's the head of this water system, whatever you just said. Sometimes it's the neighbor who also just happens to know someone else when you mention that they know someone else and did you know them, that leads you down a little bit down that rabbit hole. And you know, again, in the world we lived in with COVID, one of the things I did to sustain it a little bit, I definitely couldn't do it at the scale I normally do it, is I like to go for my morning walks, which I'll often share on Instagram. But I'll do those socially distanced. And now it's getting closer and closer, and I know masks and stuff, but I would do that. Hey, who wants to go for a walk this morning? And that's 6, 7 meetings a week before the day starts. And that would be the last piece of it. Is so much happens. And listen, I'm busy. There are kids, all that stuff. You got to go for it.
I totally agree. This has to be something you're doing all the time. It's not something you can say, hey, I'll be less busy in August, so I'm going to do some networking. It has to be something you go for and keep doing. And I think your examples had a lot of that in it.
Yeah.
Mitch, thanks for being on the show. Everybody, in the next episode, I'm going to ask Mitch, and I think this will be the perfect capstone for this series of conversations, Mitch. But everybody, I'm going to ask Mitch, how do we hack our own habits to stay focused on these things that grow our book of business, grow our relationships, grow our career, even when we're doing the work? So Mitch, thanks for being on the show. I can't wait for your answer to that last question.
Thanks, Bo.